Hello everybody, my name is Joshua and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King, where we will discuss books, both new and old. I will share with you pictures of my cats, will make you wish they were your cats, and I will drink enough coffee for me and everybody watching. So, back today with my June wrap-up and July TBR. In June, I read 14 books. I DNF'd 3, and I've picked 7 books as my TBR for July. And so the first book that I read in the month of June was this horror anthology titled Narrow Houses by Peter Crowther. And Narrow Houses was just a bit odd in that throughout his main introduction and throughout his introduction to each story and each author, Mr. Crowther really tries to sell you on the fact that this is a collection based on superstitions, and that is just not the case. I don't know why he was so stuck on this idea. I guess that's what he wanted to do, and but half the stories have nothing to do with superstitions whatsoever. The authors, he asks them, and almost all of them say, "Oh, I'm not superstitious. I'm not superstitious." So it really didn't make sense as a concept. So what you end up with, though, is a fairly decent anthology, non-themed in that case, of horror stories. It was pretty good. As anthologies go, there's always some duds, but there were some good ones in here too. I gave it 3.5 stars. So then the next book that I jumped into was the third in Mercedes Lackey's Harold Mage series, that was Magic's Price, which I'm just going to put up here because I don't even want to look at the book right now. It upset me so much. I kind of talked about it in my last video, but I really enjoyed this series, and then the third book, Mercedes Lackey, kind of took away everything that I loved about the series. It's still well written. In some ways, the ending makes sense, and I had to begrudgingly give her that. But there are a couple things in there that just had no business happening whatsoever. They were not relevant to the story. All they did was tick me off. I ended up giving it 3 stars at the end of the day. It was kind of a major letdown after the rest of the series. From there, I knew I needed a little book therapy. So I went with Stephen King's From a Buick 8. And I have all sorts of nostalgic feelings attached to this book. But aside from that, I just really enjoy this one. I know a lot of people don't like this one. I'm not sure why, because honestly, I think it has a very classic King feel. It's not his scariest book, but I always found it very interesting, very entertaining. I love the characters in this one. 5 stars for me, easily. Then, we get to my first DNF of the month. Now, I will say that typically, when I DNF a book, I'd say about 80% of the time, I read at least the first 100 pages. Sometimes a lot more, or sometimes I hit that 100 pages and I'm done. But I almost always read at least the first 100 pages. That said, there are times that I just know right off the bat, this book is not going to work for me. And Laura Watts' Carry Me Back was one of those books. The idea of the book sounded pretty entertaining to me. But I read the first 20 pages, and I already knew I could not stand the main character, and the writing was just kind of aggravating me. The main character, he just got out of prison. He got out of prison for shooting a man who was trying to steal from his house, and he is entirely unapologetic about the fact that this man will now spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And we're not going to get into debates on gun violence and on protecting your property, anything like that. That part, that didn't bother me. If that's the character, that's the character. What bothered me was then the character spends a couple pages talking about how he hopes this man has such a hard time in jail in the special... I'm not even going to say it. There are a lot of really nasty terms used towards people with handicaps. And I understand that, in this case, the main character is talking about it because it's this guy that he really doesn't like. Well, you know what? That doesn't make it any better, okay? So he makes a lot of jokes about people in wheelchairs. And it just, in this first 20 pages, it was already driving me nuts. And I just decided to throw it off. I wasn't going to read it. I was done with it. All right. I said I wanted to read more vampire fiction. And so my first attempt at doing so in a while was Richard Layman's Bite. Bite, despite what the back cover says, despite what the front would make you believe, is not a vampire novel at all. Honestly, it felt like Richard Layman was trying to write that sort of humorous horror that Jeff Strand has perfected, but he just couldn't seem to commit to whether he wanted to try and take himself seriously or try to be ridiculous. And so he ended up in this strange middle ground that just didn't work. Things were less funny and more just uncomfortable and unrealistic. I never felt drawn into the story. I didn't care for the characters. I thought the whole thing was just ridiculous. And like I said, I didn't appreciate that Richard Layman just couldn't seem to get a proper style down in this one. So that was a big loss for me. It was 2 stars. Now, technically, this was a 5-part series the way that I read it, but all together it makes John Saul's The Blackstone Chronicles. So I'm counting this as one book for this month. Blackstone Chronicles is very much a classic kind of horror, There's an old abandoned asylum in the town of Blackstone that evil is unleashed from, and every part of this serial novel is about a different character coming to terms with some sort of horror, some sort of evil that is sent their way because of the asylum. So some parts were not as good as others. Some of them I felt were just a little lacking. Others were, really cool. There's nothing in there that's going to blow you away, I don't think. But if you just want a good classic horror that's not too over the top in any way, then Blackstone Chronicles might be a good one for you. I gave it 4 stars at the end of the day. Next book I want to talk about is Gregory Miller's Darkness in the Valley. And you guys have heard me talk about this guy a couple times before, Mr. Gregory Miller. I love his writing. His first collection in this little series is set up as a bunch of separate short stories, all told by people who live in this particular town. Darkness in the Valley is not that way. It is set up more as an actual novel, but told from the point of view of each individual in the town. So you have, I can't even tell you how many different perspectives. But it's a really interesting way of doing things, because you might jump from a woman who is in her 90s and has no formal education to a highly educated man in his 40s to a child of 3. So, like I said, the constant perspective change, it might be a little off-putting to some, but personally, I really enjoy it. The people of Uncanny Valley, they are... they're happy people, simple people. And one day, this mining company comes in and decides they are going to take over through brute force. What they don't realize is that Uncanny Valley, well, it deserves its name because there are some very, very strange denizens there and some things that this mining company should definitely beware of. And I gave it 5 stars. Okay, so following that, this is a book that I had on pre-order. This is Melissa Larson's Shudder, and this is actually her premiere, her debut novel. I thought that I was getting a sort of classic horror setup with this one. It is about a woman who loses her father. She moves to the big city just to, kind of start a new life for herself. Meets a famous filmmaker and is offered the starring role in his next film, which is taking place on this tiny island where her and the other people included in this film are the only people there, completely isolated from the rest of the world, and she knows nothing about the film, nothing about her character, nothing about what is expected of her, except that he says, basically for the next few months, your life is mine, and I'm going to offer you a huge amount of money to do this. So it throws off a lot of red flags for her, but she does it anyway because, characters like that always do. So, like I said, I thought I was going to get a horror setup. This book, however, is not horror. It is apparently more of a suspense thriller than anything. So that was a little disappointing. I felt that it was overwritten in certain areas, and in others, things just need a little more development. But that said, for being the first novel of Miss Larson, I think she did a pretty good job. Like I said, I think that the cover mostly was what misled me, and the synopsis on the back, I really thought I was going to get something a little scarier. So I try not to let that affect my my enjoyment of it, but it did a little bit. But at the end of the day, it was passable. It was pretty good, and I gave it 3 stars. Okay, so this book, Tom Townsend's Panzer Spirit. I'm going to be talking about this book in a full video soon, so I'm not going to go over it here. If you watched my last video, you know that this book really ticked me off, and I gave it 1 star. So, yeah, you'll see. Recently, I picked up a bunch of these in a lot on eBay. This is the Creep Over series, so it's sort of set up like the old, Goosebumps and Fear Street and that sort of thing that we all know and love, but for a new age. And so I picked them up. It was something like 13 books, and it was a really good price. I was interested. I'd heard some things about them, So I read the first 2. I read Truth or Dare, which is the first one. And Truth or Dare is, it's just that. It's about a girl having a sleepover with some of her friends. They get to talking, and she admits that she has a crush on this particular boy. Well, in the middle of the night, her phone goes off. She gets a text from a number she doesn't know, who basically threatens her and tells her, stay away from him, he's mine, do what I say or else. And from there, she starts getting these threats more and more often. Things start happening, things being moved around and destroyed in her room, that sort of thing. So, this one was okay. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I think I was expecting a little more, but it did not dissuade me from picking up the next one, which is You Can't Come In Here. And this one is about a girl who only really has 2 main friends in this little town, and it's this very odd brother and sister duo who live next door to them. She never sees their parents. She always hangs out with them at night. They're homeschooled, so she doesn't see them at school. Her other friends don't know them or anything. Her parents don't know them. But they're just a little odd. They're a little too good at everything. A little too intelligent for their age, And so everyone else seems to think that there might be something going on. But the main character, she's just happy to have them around. She's happy to be part of their world, And as things progress, she slowly starts to come to the realization that, maybe there is something a little odd about these kids. This one was better than the first. The setup is pretty obvious, but the ending kind of surprised me in the direction that the author took. So I like this one a little better. I gave it 3.5 stars. Okay, next up, I read Melissa Snark's Hook, Dead to Rights. And again, I kind of talked about this one a little bit in my last video. I have never read anything by Melissa Snark, so this was completely new to me. Hook, Dead to Rights is the first part of a trilogy, and it is another Peter Pan retelling. In this case, however, Captain Hook is a female pirate who is half human and half mermaid. They live in Neverland, and she is at constant war with Peter Pan. She is a pirate, so she is not she's not the nicest person herself. She pillages and destroys other ships and steals and lies and cheats and hurts people. Her main goal is to hunt Peter Pan down and steal back all the children that he is taking from the other land, which I can only assume is the human world. You kind of know that they have a history. It hints at some rather dark things, but nothing is said outright. I assume that the rest will be developed throughout the series. I thought it was great. Very actiony. Melissa Snark has little details in there that really made a big difference for me, honestly, like she mentions at the very beginning that her pirates all plug their ears, and they keep their ears plugged because of the constant cannon fire, and otherwise they'll go deaf. And it makes a lot of sense, but I never thought of that. And so because of that, because they're constantly wearing the earplugs, most of their communication is through sign language. Little details like that just really resonated with me for some reason. It made it more realistic, even though clearly there's not much that's realistic about the book. I very much enjoyed it. I can't wait to jump into the next one. Gave it 5 stars. After that, I jumped into a science fiction. This is John Robert Russell's Kabu. And I got this in that massive science fiction haul that I filmed a while back. This book was so odd and unique. Basically, these two professors start talking. One of them tells the other about these dreams he keeps having about this world of Kabu. Lives an entirely different life from start to finish. And he's kind of controlling the world in that he is the one who is introducing them to technology and inventions well before they should have these things. So he's kind of in a prehistoric time, but not quite. The people are a little more intelligent, and so it's basically just the story of him accelerating humanity's understanding the world and their science of the world much earlier than it should be, and the potential consequences of that. So it's a very unique read. I love the cover. I think it's great. I really enjoyed it. There was some parts that I was not a huge fan of. It got a little off subject, and a little lost, a little muddled sometimes, I think. But overall, I gave it 4 stars, and I'm really, really glad I picked this up. Okay, I talked about this Ramsey Campbell book I picked up recently. It's a signed copy of The Influence, and I said that this was going to be my last chance with the Ramsey Campbell. This would either be the book that brought me around to his writing, or I would give up because he's clearly just not an author that I can understand and appreciate, and I was going to give it to one of you lucky people in a giveaway. That is exactly what's going to happen. So I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it's probably not even a bad book. Honestly, I don't think it is. I was reading it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the writing per se. I just don't like Ramsey Campbell. So there you go. I've said it. It's out there. No more Ramsey Campbell for me. I'm done. Someone's going to get a signed Ramsey Campbell, probably in the trivia giveaway that I do for my 500 subscriber little shindig. So look forward to that, guys. Okay. Starting to get closer to being able to wrap up. We are on the last 3 now. So, the next book that I finished, did not finish in this case, because this was a DNF for me, was Christopher Ransom's The Fading. And this is really unfortunate because the lovely Gloria McNeely sent me this and one other book in the mail I was really excited to get into it. It sounded like, it kind of sounded like an adult version of Let's Get Invisible from R.L. Stine. So I was pretty excited about it. I read 150 pages out of 500 pages, about 500 pages. And man, it just didn't work for me. I have read one other book from Christopher Ransom way back in the day, and after I picked up this book, I found it on Goodreads and realized that, oh yeah, I really hated this book. But I was hoping that this would change my mind about him. It did not. I don't like his writing. In this case, unlike with Ramsey Campbell, I think that Christopher Ransom just really is not a good author, I'll be honest. I don't think he's very good at writing. And, you know, maybe that sounds a little mean, but I'm just trying to be honest here, guys. I DNF'd it. If I'd finished it, it would have been a 1-star read because there was nothing in there that I liked. Not a single thing. The last of the Kindle books that I read for the month, and I've got my paper here because this is a long title. The last book I read was Ministry Protocol, Thrilling Tales of the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences by Pip Ballantine. So, in addition to being a mouthful, this is an anthology based off of the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences series. Whew. These all take place in a sort of Victorian London style time, but they're sort of a steampunk setup with supernatural elements. It sounds like something I should really enjoy. But in this case, a lot of the writing just felt very stuffy and stiff and boring to me. Some of it was pretty good, but others just fell very flat for me. I give it 3 stars at the end of the day. And then the final book that I finished for the month was T.M. Wright's The Playground. And I'll show you guys the cover inside, which is actually pretty awful in my opinion. Yeah, that's not one of those covers that you're proud to show off. I think it's actually pretty ridiculous. But the book itself was unique. It was very unique. And I have not given it a rating yet. I'm still kind of pondering it in my head. But you'll see a review about that soon. So I'll tell you my thoughts and give you a little about the book there, but I'll tell you it is not your normal horror at all. So getting into my July TBR, like I said, I've picked 7 physical books here, and then there's only one on my Kindle that I know I want to get to. That one is the second in the Hook trilogy from Melissa Snark. Put a nice little picture up over here, of course. Like I said, I have a feeling that I'm really going to enjoy this trilogy because that first book was such a surprise to me. If you are a fan of, you know, fairy tale retellings, in this case Peter Pan retelling, then I think you will very, very much enjoy this one. It has all the classic Peter Pan elements, but in very different ways. So I really, really like this one. I can't wait to get into the second one, and if I get time, I might actually read the third, depending on how the second goes. So, now, the physical books. I showed this one off in my last one. This is John Rudy's The Bargain. This is Hitler trying to move in on Transylvania, Romania territory, and unfortunately for him, they have a bargain with Mr. Dracula himself, and he is going to make sure that no warmonger edges in on his territory. 2 books that I really want to get to, again, showed them off in the last one, was Sweet Dreams by William Johnstone and Ruby Jean Jensen's Best Friends. As we talked about, these go together. That is why the ever wonderful Juan at Plagued by Visions sent me this one. And I really want to read them both this month and do a little comparison video for you guys if that is something you would be interested in. I also want to get to some science fiction because, again, I have all this science fiction sitting there from a massive book haul. So this is the first in a series. I figure I can read this first one. If I really enjoy it, I'll have the series. If I don't, I can get rid of the series, and it's that much room on my bookshelf that I've now opened. So this is Fred Saberhagen's Berserker. And it sounds like a classic science fiction setup. Two alien races meet and start a war. And you know what? I don't want to know anything else about it. I feel like science fiction is one of those things where you can read a synopsis and read a different synopsis. They both sound the exact same, but once you read the book, it's so vastly different. So I'm just going to let the book itself surprise me. Okay, I'd also like to pick up a classic. I'm trying to read more classics. In this case, it is more of a horror classic. H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man. I guess you could also say it's another science fiction, but love that cover, by the way. I want to pick that up. I have not read The Invisible Man in I don't even know how many years. Back into vampire fiction because Richard Layman let me down so horribly last month. I'm giving this another try. This is a gorgeous cover. This is Desmond Stewart's The Vampire of Mons. And this is about a boys' school and a bizarre teacher, a war and a wave of terror. I'm really excited about that one. And then the final book that I know I want to get to this month, like I said, very much enjoyed Kabu. So I also have John Robert Russell's Ta. It has another very strange cover, and I have a feeling it's going to be just as unique. So we'll see how that goes. There you go, guys. That is my June wrap-up and July TBR. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you can find some books that you might be interested in from this. As always, I'm very excited to talk about these books and about other books with you down in the comments. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe. I've never actually said that before, but you know, it really does kind of matter. So if you want to see more of this ridiculous face, or if you want to see some of these adorable faces, yeah, see, gotcha there, haha. Then hit that subscribe button and then hit the little bell looking icon and we'll have some fun together. So thank you guys, as always. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay strong. There are awesome things coming your way. Cheers.